The number one mistake that bands make is to think that they can outsmart a system. Like, they think, well, if we get involved in this sort of professional way of doing things, a sort of mainstream way of doing things, like if we get an account, if we get a manager and a booking agent and a record label and a promotions person, a public relations person, and we pay all of these people to facilitate different aspects of our career, somehow we can outsmart the pure mathematics of that and keep our heads above water. And that system exists to support itself. It doesn't exist to support the bands. So that's the biggest sort of business mistake that bands can make, is to think that this system, that they can just sort of jump into this system and somehow avoid what appears to be pure mathematics, that money comes in one place and then it gets spread out to all these other people who don't actually earn the money. They're just doing things and charging a tax in the process. The way to avoid that is to do as much of the administration and as much of the sort of support for your band, doing as much of that yourself as possible, because then you're keeping all of the money and you're keeping control of all the decisions. You won't ever be in the position of having someone make a decision based on his self-interest rather than your interest. Like the obvious example is, if you have a booking agent and he can book you a series of meaningless shows playing in places where nobody particularly wants to see you, where you have to make really long drives, but he can get reasonable money for those shows, then he will book those shows for you, and you will be obliged to play them, and you will be obliged to go through all the hassle that it takes to do them, so that the booking agent can make his commission. In the process of doing that, you as a band may not earn any money at all. You may not be playing in front of a sympathetic audience, and you may not be helping your situation in the slightest, but you're going through the motions. You're pretending to do these things for the sake of somebody else. Whereas if you book your own shows, you book your own series of shows, you can play in places where you know people will be receptive, where you know that you'll be playing in front of a sympathetic audience, and you can organize the tour in a way that's not going to be too tiresome for you. That's just one example. The other obvious examples are things like trying to get more attention for your band by having publicity people trumpet your band and try to get attention from other people. Doing that costs money, and it doesn't generate any money. It generates publicity, which does not necessarily translate into money. So you're spending money for the sake of having yourself thrust under people's noses. And as a consumer of music, as a fan, when a band is sort of thrust at me in this fashion and wiggled in front of me like a severed head, then it makes me hate them. It makes me less sympathetic to whatever they're trying to do.